Hey everyone, this is Mike Schmitz with Asian Efficiency, and in this video I want to break down the Getting Things Done or GTD methodology outlined by David Allen in his uber popular book. GTD is one of the most popular productivity systems out there today, and with good reason. It's a very effective system for clearing your mind of all inputs so you can focus on the things that are truly important, which in turn is going to allow you to do your best work. If you constantly feel overwhelmed, GTD's central concept of capturing everything into a trusted system has the potential to revolutionize your life. However, GTD can be a bit intimidating when you're trying to get started with it. The book itself is fairly lengthy, and frankly, it's quite a bit longer than it needs to be. I personally didn't make it through the first time I tried to read it because it was so long. So in this video, I want to break it down for you and start eliminating the barriers for you so you can be productive and get more done. I mean, just take a look at this flowchart. This is GTD. If you're like a lot of people, you'll take one look at this and decide it's just not for you. Just look at how complex this thing is. You may have even seen this before and decided that it's just way too hard to get started with this. That's one of the biggest problems with GTD, the steep learning curve. And later on in this video, we're going to break this flowchart down step by step for you and accelerate the learning curve so you can get up and running with GTD in no time. We're also going to highlight the potential pitfalls that typically cause people to give up on GTD before it has a chance to work for them, including the number one and easily avoidable mistake we see many beginners make. We'll also cover some of the best tools on the market for implementing GTD, including the tools I use personally to balance family, life, work, and personal responsibilities. If you've ever felt overwhelmed and unable to keep up with everything coming at you, then this video is just for you. By the end of this video, you'll have a strategy for taking back control of your life and achieving tranquility and clarity instead of chaos and disorder. Let's dive in. GTD is built around the concept that you have a lot of different inputs. These are things that enter your consciousness and you must decide what to do with them. The problem is that most people just put them off. For example, reading an email that requires some action, but just leaving it in your inbox and hoping you'll remember to do something with it later. There are 5 basic steps to the GTD methodology: capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. Let's break these down one by one. Number 1, capture. Collect what has your attention. Have you ever had a great idea, but were too busy to write it down and then completely forgot about it later? That's because your brain is for having ideas, not storing them. The central tenet of GTD is to capture everything and put it into a trusted system so that you can make appropriate decisions about what to do when. David Allen says you can't feel good about what you're not doing unless you know what you're not doing. And if you don't capture the things that have your attention, you'll get stuck in emergency scan modality by default. Many people live their lives constantly reacting like this, trying to put out fires that spring up because they've forgotten about things they needed to do, or at least they're worried about what they may have forgotten, so they can't focus on any one thing for very long. You need to capture everything that has your attention to an inbox, notepad, app like drafts, etc. Just make sure that you get everything. Chances are you'll have several inboxes like this, so it's important to identify them all so you can routinely process them. Later on in this video, I'm going to show you the inboxes that I use and how they fit into my GTD system. For example, you may have a paper tray, your email inbox. You may capture random thoughts or notes to an app like Drafts, etc. If you've never taken the time to identify the inboxes that exist in your life, do this now. Number 2, clarify. Process what it means. Once you have everything collected in your inbox or inboxes, only then can you begin to process it and make decisions about what to do with all those inputs. This is actually the easy part, as once you have everything captured and you have a plan in place for processing all those pieces of information, it only takes a few seconds to decide where they belong in your trusted system. Later on in this video, I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples. We'll break down the GTD decision tree in a little bit, and I'll show you the exact process for identifying everything and putting it in the appropriate containers so you always know exactly where everything is when you need it. But for now, just know that you have to do this regularly. You can't just let your inboxes pile up. You have to do something about them, and you have to do it regularly. Number 3, organize. Put it where it belongs. Once you identify what something is, you have to put it in the appropriate bucket. For example, if it's something actionable, put it in your task management system. We recommend OmniFocus, but you could use something like Todoist, Things, or Asana instead. If it's not actionable, but it's reference material you might need later, put it somewhere you can easily recall it. If it's time sensitive, like a meeting or an appointment, put it on your calendar. If it's not important, you may decide just to trash it and not worry about it anymore. This is also where the idea of contexts come into play. A context is basically just a tool, thing, place, or person you need to get something done. For example, a list of phone calls you have to make would be grouped under the phone context, or a list of grocery items under the grocery store context. Number 4, reflect. Review frequently. This is the number one mistake I see people make, and it's the biggest reason why GTD doesn't work for people. By failing to review consistently, they just let things pile up. They can get the system in place, but then they try to set it and forget it, and they don't maintain it. When it comes to your productivity, though, you constantly have to be reviewing and making adjustments. It's important to clean up and update your lists, to dump any new loose ends into your trusted system, and to clear your mind. At Agent Efficiency, we recommend that you do this every week. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, but the benefit of feeling like you're finally in control of your life far outweighs the cost. Number 5, engage. Simply do. This step sounds simple, and it is, if you've set up your system correctly. If you're on top of your tasks and know what you need to get done each day, it's easy to just pull up your list and execute the plan. The most productive people we know are the ones who either the night before or first thing in the morning sit down with their task lists and identify the top things they need to do that day, then spend the rest of the day just executing the plan. This only works, though, if you've followed the first 4 steps and you can really trust that everything you need to do is on your list and in the appropriate containers. So let's take a look at how to actually apply this. Throughout your day, you're constantly bombarded with information, such as things you have to do, errands you have to run, names and phone numbers, etc. All of these things are constantly vying for your attention in your in-basket. When information like this comes at you, the first question you have to ask yourself is, what is this piece of information? Once you decide what it is, you can then answer the question, is it actionable? If it's not actionable, it can go one of 3 places. First, it could go in the trash. A surprisingly high amount of information we try to hang on to actually belongs here. Many people have a tendency to be a digital hoarder, but the reality is that you don't need all the stuff you say you need. Don't be afraid to delete things that you don't think are important anymore. If you decide it actually is important, the second place you could put it is a someday maybe folder, if it will be important to review at a later date, or the third place you could put it is a reference file, so you can access that information easily when you actually need it. If the information is actionable, you need to ask yourself, what's the next action? If you can't complete the activity in one step, then it's actually not an action, it's a project, and it needs further planning. A project is anything that contains multiple steps in order to complete it. Chances are you'll have several projects active at any given time. So in addition to the initial planning phase of the project, it's also very important that you regularly review the project to see if there are any additional steps that are required to complete it. If the information is not a project and you can actually finish it in one step, the next question you need to ask is, will this take less than 2 minutes? If it will take less than 2 minutes to complete the activity, just go ahead and finish it. It will probably take more time and effort to decide on a follow-up plan than it will to actually just complete the activity. If it will take more than 2 minutes to complete, you can do one of two things. First, you can delegate it to someone else, in which case you need to make sure that it ends up on a waiting list for you to follow up with. Make sure that you don't just hand it off and forget about it, especially if you are the one ultimately responsible for the completion of the activity. Make sure that you follow up and make sure that the task gets finished. Second, you could defer it. When you defer a task, you're pushing it out into the future for one of two reasons. Either you need to complete the task at a specific time, or you need something else to be finished before you can get to that task. If you're deferring the task because it is time-based, like a meeting, make sure it ends up on your calendar. If it's not time-based and you're waiting for something else to be finished before you can get to this task, make sure it ends up on your next actions list. A task manager like OmniFocus is great for this, as you can have sequential projects where tasks are marked as unavailable until the previous task is completed. Let's walk through a couple practical examples of how you might implement GTD on a day-to-day basis. Tom is a young entrepreneur right out of college. He's had several good ideas, but hasn't been able to focus on any of them for very long, so he's decided to try out the GTD system in hopes that he'll actually be able to follow through and execute on some of his good ideas. His latest idea, he believes, is his best one, a grocery delivery service, so he decides to pursue it a bit further. First, he asks himself, what is this? It's a business idea that he's excited to get moving on. The next question is it actionable? As it's currently stated, it's not. It's just an idea. So he rewords it to read, start grocery delivery business. Now that it's actionable, the next question is, what is the next action? At this point, Tom begins to realize that starting a grocery delivery business will take quite a bit of effort, as this is not a single-step action, and he turns it into a project in his task management system. He quickly identifies several tasks he must complete, such as identify local competitors, buy a delivery vehicle, figure out business expenses, pick a business name, etc. Instead of trying to do all of this at once, he identifies one task to start with: identify local competitors. The next question he must ask is, will this take less than 2 minutes to complete? It's possible it might take longer, but Tom thinks he can complete it in just a couple minutes, so he decides to do a quick Google search for grocery delivery services and writes down all the competing services that show up in his local area. Here's another example. Mary is a parent of 2 small children who attend the local elementary school. Every Friday, her kids each bring home a Friday folder with announcements and other important information that require the parents' attention. This Friday, there happens to be a notice of an upcoming parent-teacher meeting on the following Tuesday at 6 p.m. The first thing Mary does is answer the question, what is this? It's an appointment for the parent-teacher meeting on next Tuesday at 6 p.m. The next question she must ask is this actionable? It is actionable, as her attendance is required. The next question she must ask is, what is the next action? The next action is to go to the meeting. It's not a multi-step project, so the next question is, will it take less than 2 minutes? It will probably take about an hour, which is why it was scheduled for next Tuesday. Since she is the parent, she cannot delegate her attendance at this meeting and must defer it instead. The meeting doesn't take place until next Tuesday. And since it is time sensitive, it will end up on her calendar instead of a next actions list. Here's one last example. Bob is a college student who is trying to balance a full-time job and graduate school as he pursues his MBA. He stumbles upon the Asian Efficiency website and starts combing through the blog, looking for tips and tricks that can make him more productive. He happens to find the article that lists recommended books about productivity and sees several that look very interesting. One in particular, though, really catches his eye, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, and he wants to make sure he doesn't forget about it. The first question Bob must ask is, what is this? In this case, it's a book title he wants to save for later reading. The next question he asks is this actionable? It might be if he wanted to start reading it now, but he has to go to work in 15 minutes, so not really. Instead of starting on it now, he puts it in his reference file, which in this case is an Evernote note titled Books to Read. So those are 3 quick examples of how you might implement the GTD decision-making tree in your everyday life. But the secret to making GTD or any task management methodology work is to make sure that you can trust your own system. One aspect of this is knowing what applications you're going to use and what role they're going to fill. So for example, I use Drafts as my quick capture inbox on my iOS devices and NVAlt on my Mac. All of my emails that require actions get sent directly to my OmniFocus inbox, and I have a paper tray for all the physical items that I need to process. I use Evernote as my someday maybe list and reference file because it's easy to store information here and it's easily searchable. I use OmniFocus as my task management app for planning my projects and making sure that everything gets done. Lastly, I use BusyCal as my calendaring app for my meetings and other time-based tasks. So I hope that this video has helped you understand the basics of the GTD system and how it can be implemented successfully in your life. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us in the comments. Thank you.